All right, welcome to this introductory training tutorial on getting familiar with Git and GitHub for people who don't already know how to do those. To get started, we're going to be talking about Git and GitHub and how to use those right now. But just to get started, what even is Git? So Git is an extremely popular version control system that's used by millions of people around the world. So a version control, or VCS, is a tool that basically helps you keep track of changes that have been made to a project, mostly code-related and development-related projects, but it can be used for really anything that has multiple files in that. Some of the perks of working in Git and any version control include that multiple people can work on the same project without overwriting each other's work. You can access the same files, you can keep track of changes, and you can have different branches. So you could try adding features and merging those in later if you needed to. Or you could even separate a different fork of a code base if you wanted to make a totally different version of a project that was using the existing code. One of the nice things is you can roll back to previous versions as well. So if you've made changes in a Git project, you can always go back and basically go back in time if you ever need to access those changes from an earlier version of what you were working on. So Git is not the same thing as GitHub. GitHub is a platform that is used to manage projects that are using version control with Git. So GitHub is owned by Microsoft. It's free for individuals, but there are paid tiers if you want to work with larger groups or more advanced features, and a few other things that make the paid version more attractive to certain groups. It's not the only tool that lets you work with Git. You could also use Gitkraken or Bitbucket or GitLab, but GitHub, I would say, is probably the most commonly used of the popular version control platforms. GitHub makes it very easy to collaborate with other people, and a lot of people like to show off their work on their GitHub pages. So Git and GitHub are not the same thing. Git is open source software that is installed on your machine or on a remote server, but basically it's its own version control program that was actually made by the same person who made the Linux operating system, if you know what that is. GitHub is a platform owned by Microsoft that lets people use Git projects and share them and collaborate with them. You don't need to use GitHub to use Git, but a lot of people do because it makes life easier. Makes it easier to collaborate. You can access projects anywhere that they are online and you have an internet connection, and you can show off your work with those. So we are going to be working with GitHub Desktop, which is an application you run on your desktop or your laptop computer that is a little easier to use than the typical form of working with Git, which is on the command line or through a terminal. If you're not already familiar with a terminal, it can be really confusing to even understand how to work with a typing-based interface and then to learn Git on top of learning how to use the terminal. So we are going to be doing almost everything you need in Git through GitHub Desktop, which is easier to use for a lot of people and is actually pretty helpful because you can see certain things a little more easily than you can over the command line. If you ever want to move to the command line, all of the things that you learn that you can do on GitHub Desktop, you can also do in the command line. It's just a little easier to get started with this and then move to the more advanced version if you need to. A couple of things that are helpful to know before we actually get started working with Git or GitHub is, what is a repository? You will hear this term a lot when you're working in Git. And a repository or a repo, is often shortened to a Git repo or just repo, is just a collection of files on your computer or on a remote computer that has all of the things that you'll be working with. This can be code if you are doing a lot of code-based work. This can also have visual assets like graphics, and if you were making a game, icons and other pieces if you were making an app, and things like that. You can see the version history of all changes that have been made in that repo, and you can see other documentation within that as well. The main things you will do with a repo are to create a new one from scratch or to clone an existing repo, and that typically comes from somewhere else online. And we'll look at how to do both of those. All right, so to get started with Git and with GitHub, the first thing is probably to log into your GitHub account or to create one if you don't have one. So you'll see that this is the github.com interface. I'm going to click the sign in button to sign in. If you already have an account, you can sign in there. If not, you can sign up through the homepage there. From here, if I wanted to start a new repo, I don't need to use the GitHub desktop app at all. I can click this green New button, and I can start a new repository right from here. I can give it a name, so I could call this New Repository. You'll see that I have that name available. I could add a description if I wanted to. I can change the visibility, meaning if I want other people to be able to see this, or if I want to be the only person who can access this. And basically I'm ready to go. We don't need to worry about these bottom three just yet. We're just going to go ahead and click this green button that says Create Repository. And now we have a repo. So right now there's nothing in this repo. You'll see that if we wanted to, we could quickly download all of the Git information from GitHub using the GitHub desktop app. Or if we wanted to, we could open the app later and we could point it to this address that we have here. All right, so I don't have any files in here yet. So if I wanted to add a file to this repository through the GitHub interface, I can actually do that by clicking the Create a New File button here. This is currently a blank file with nothing in it, not even a name. So I'll just call this hello.txt for a text file. And I'll type hello everybody. And I've made my changes in my file. I'm going to now commit those changes. So when I click the commit button, the green button up here, it's going to ask me for a message. Anytime you do anything in a repo, you need a message attached to that that explains what you have done. So I'm going to say initial commit to create file. I click commit changes, and now I have my hello.txt file here. If I click my code button up in the top bar, you'll see I now have my new hello.txt. You'll see I don't have any README here. README is just the file that has all the project information. It's not needed, but anytime you're working with other people, or even if you have a complicated project you're working on yourself, it can be helpful to have a README with some basic information in that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up GitHub Desktop, which I have downloaded and installed and logged into already. And basically, once I have this set up, I can do all of my Git related things from this interface. If I want to open the repository that I've just created here, I click the green code button, and I can click the Open with GitHub Desktop to open that file in the GitHub Desktop app. I click GitHub Desktop, and it will open that project in GitHub Desktop. From here, I'm going to choose where I want to put this file. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this on my desktop. It's going to be called the New Repository folder. And when I click Select, you'll see that it will have my STS projects username from the github.com website link, the name New Repository, and a local path, which is where on my computer the files from that repository are going to go. You'll see the button that says Clone. If I click the Clone button, you'll see I now have all of the files in this project local to my computer. If I want to see those files, I can click this Show in Finder if I'm on a Mac, or I believe it's Show in Explorer if I'm on Windows. And you'll see that I now have a hello.txt file. That is the project file for the project that I've created this repo for.